we were supposed to release the RazbB interview. I sat down with RazbB last week to talk with him about sex abuse and the fact that for years he's been asking for people to take him serious. He's been asking for justice. He's been asking for people to take the alleged sex abuse that occurred when he was a kid by his cousin and former manager Chris Stokes, and also allegedly with Marques Houston. And so I wanted to, now that we're in the era of the Me Too and the Time's Up movement, that all these women have been getting a platform to share and find justice, I felt like it was time to circle back and have a conversation with Raz, who I haven't talked to since, 13 years ago on this topic. So I interviewed Raz, and when the promo for the interview went out, there was an alleged cease and desist letter sent to FOXSOUL stopping and blocking the interview from airing, which is the craziest thing because in the 5 years I've owned Hollywood Unlocked, in the 4 years that I've had this show, I have never received a cease and desist letter for any interview from anybody about stopping or blocking a conversation. And I felt like this is where Chris up. Chris, where you up was you did it in a time where it is like literally adding gasoline to a fire. Now that you have temporarily blocked the interview, you have lit social media on fire where they are demanding not only that they see the interview, but that you be strapped down the way you probably allegedly strapped these kids down and put into a test for the truth. I sat down with RazbB at lunch in Miami, and we had a long conversation about the road ahead in airing this interview, and also him, doing what he's going to do to seek justice. And I also received a phone call from Marques Houston. And Marques, if you're watching, I'm just going to be very transparent because I told you when I answered the phone, one, this was not a safe space for you, nor was it a private call because I was so pissed at the idea that Chris thought that he could silence me here at Hollywood Unlocked and silence the show and, silence any guest who wants to come on and seek justice. And so Marques shared from his point of view that, he feels like Raz is just using this for attention. The same old stuff they've been saying, that there's no truth to it, that Raz is, that other people in Raz's life molested him, which Raz did talk about in the interview. And so he kept going on and on about how he felt it was unfair that Raz was continuing to be given a platform to talk about this. And I explained to him that if he's a victim, I've been a victim of child molest. If he's a victim and feels like he needs to be given his just due, so be it. And then, he went on. I went on to say to Marques that we would invite him here, him and Chris Stokes. So I'm going to say this to you publicly. Not only should you do the lie detector test, but you should also come on the show. I will sit down with you, Marques. I will sit down with you, Chris, and I'll sit down with any of you that were allegedly involved in this and give you a fair platform. I'm going to ask you hard questions, but if you did nothing wrong, you shouldn't have a problem coming and having those conversations. So what do you guys think about all of that?
I believe him. I 100%. I'm going to keep on saying this every time we talk about this topic. I have never not believed RazbB. I think most people with sense believe RazbB, regardless of what you think about him personally. And unfortunately for me, I have exes and a lot of my male friends who have confessed that they have been abused or molested. I know what that looks like, and it completely rings true to me. My heart goes out to him. I hope he gets the healing, and I really feel like Chris Stokes, his day of reckoning is also coming. I think that RazbB is owed an apology and some kind of reparations for what he's been through, because they've been trying to discredit him and it almost worked. But in this age of Me Too, I think men have to also be involved in that dialogue because they too get molested. It's not just women.
I agree. Raz is asking for a polygraph test, and while Chris Stokes has been responding to DMs of fans who've had a lot to say about that request and telling him that they demand that he takes it. He's not the only one. Omarion's brother Orion, and I've always liked Orion. I didn't like him just because he was cute. I didn't like him because he had a baby by Janae Aiko. I liked him because Orion has always just been a cool, honest, straight up guy. No, he's straight up. He went to Instagram and he posted this photo. Post the photo. He posted this photo of him and his daughter, who's grown up now, and he said, "Papa's proud of you, my baby." Chris Stokes went under there and did the whole pound and the fire flame, and Orion said, "Take the polygraphs in large letters." Now, Orion, you be the man that all those other should have been a long time ago, and you stand behind Raz and ask him and ask Chris Stokes to be held accountable. Because again, if you did nothing wrong, what's wrong with stepping forward and taking the polygraph? What's wrong?
It's that easy. Just take the polygraph.
Exactly.
Well, Chris hasn't responded to taking the polygraph test, but here's my offering. Hollywood Unlocked will pay for all of the polygraph tests. Me.
Okay.
Okay, Maury.
Matter of fact, I'm going to split it with Maury. We're going to do it together, and we're going to do a 2-night special. We're going to air it here and on the Maury Povich Show. Done.
I would love to see that.
I think it's just sad because I remember when these allegations first came about, and we all made fun of RazbB. And that's what people do to men that are molested or touched as kids. You get made fun of. If you get made fun of, it's that, or the person that's actually doing the abusing to you will, if you don't want to be touched, if you don't want to be attacked, they will call you gay. They'll call you names. They'll call you stupid. And I feel like a lot of men didn't come around and really support him, because I was one of those people like Blue. I always believed him. I just didn't know what to do about it. It's like, okay, that happened. Now what? And I feel like it shows you in today's times with the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, that we do need to rally around people like RazbB that have these kind of stories and really support them, because I can't even imagine if I was him in his shoes. And for so many years, he's been telling the same story, exactly the same story, and no one has even offered to really step out and take that next step to help him. So I really do think it's dope that you gave him a platform, Jason. And also for Chris Stokes and Marques Houston, come on here. If you think he just wants attention, tell the other side of it. We never get to hear the other side. Y'all just say he wants attention. He's not promoting shit. He don't have shit to sell. What is he promoting? Himself? Like, come on now. I want to hear the other side. I want to hear Chris Stokes' side. I want to hear Marques Houston's side.
Omarion just recently, or not too long ago, had an interview with Vlad TV. And in the interview, he seemingly validated the concerns raised by Raz. Marques also said to me on the phone that he was aware that Raz was molested, but by other people. Here's my thing. If you remember, if you've been watching this show since day one, you remember Kay Michelle was here. And what she said on the show about R. Kelly was that she was around when things were happening. There were mothers in the kitchen cooking, and there were other people there, staff that were helping and aiding and abetting this activity. If you were a security guard and you picked people up from the airport, if you were an assistant booking a hotel room or traveling with them, you all need to go to jail because you're all complicit. Yep. It's almost like if a drive-by shooting happens, you don't just lock up the shooter, you lock up everybody in the car. Unless you cooperate, then maybe you can get a deal. But there are crimes that have been committed and decisions were made. And so for that, all those people need to be in trouble. Now, this is the thing that I don't understand. One of the things when we did our research that we said one of the reasons why men don't come forward is because of guilt and shame. Like they're afraid to be looked at as gay or looked at as weak. And how did you let some man or some woman take over you? Because that was another perspective on Clubhouse where people were talking about women are also predators for young men too. And so when I think about the idea that a man would come forward and say, I was molested, a man stuck his penis in me or made me suck his dick, and we would think that he's doing that just for clout in today's society as a black man, I don't believe that.
Even back then when he did it, even worse back then.
It was worse back then, yeah.
It really way worse. It was like, dog, what are you saying?
But can we address this whole thing? Oh, go ahead, Jason. You were about to make a point.
My point is, when I was molested, my mother, I remember sitting with her in the police department and her telling me that she did not believe I was molested, that she didn't understand why somebody would touch me. And I just go back to that moment when I was 7. And then I look at somebody now who is 33 years old, and the 7-year-old and the 33-year-old are literally having the same experience. And I think that's very telling about the culture and the climate that we live in, that we have not provided a safe space for young boys to be able to come forward and tell their part. And so I'm very troubled at the idea that they would try to block him from telling his truth, because you can say whatever you want about me. I'm going to let you say whatever you want, and I'm going to come out and address it head on, because if there is truth or no truth, I own everything that I do and say. And I said to FOXSOUL, we as partners cannot be complicit in hiding this interview from the public. We have to find the legal route to get to making sure that the public can see his point of view, and then let the chips fall where they may.
It's impossible to be a Chris Stokes allegedly or an R. Kelly allegedly without an ecosystem. It's impossible to do it this long without people around you who are complicit. And so we absolutely need to look around the people around him, because they also have an incentive to make RazB look crazy. It's not just about they're loyal to Chris Stokes. They know that if Chris Stokes goes down, then they have to admit that they helped him do what he did. And also to the point about, well, he was molested by other people. Tyler Perry once famously talked to Oprah about being molested. And Oprah said, why do you think you've been molested by so many different people? And Tyler said, when you are molested, the sharks can smell the blood in the water. You get molested one time, there's a broken spiritness that you have that other molesters smell and they pick up on. So him saying he was molested by other people doesn't take away from what Chris Stokes did to him, allegedly. It only actually substantiates it. So that whole excuse is BS to me.
Well, let me give you some information we found that just in doing our research. So, here, most of the victims of child abuse keep it a secret, and that they're saying that 1 in every 6 men have been a victim of sex abuse. 1 in every 6. Just think about that, right? And so some of the reasons why they don't report it, and this came from Psychology Today. 1, the reaction, a lot of anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and flashbacks, eating disorders that are caused as a result of being sexually abused. Shame and self-blame. They feel powerless. They feel like they have no power to control being victimized. And so there's shame in that. Guilt. They don't want to tell the abuse because they felt like they did something to bring it on. No pun intended, because don't they have a movie called Bring It On? Or, I can't. They do. Also, sexuality. I would say as a gay man, I love helping children. And I remember when people used to be so mad at the stuff I would do on the show, they would attack me. They would call me fat, gay. Those are things that I was at the time. I'm thinned out a little bit and I'm still gay. But they would also say, oh, you're a child molester. Because you're gay, you're a child molester. And it made me so uncomfortable to want to help kids that I literally stopped helping children as a result of being labeled a pedophile because I was a gay man. I remember when I had to switch up how I talk, because you could be 39 years old and I'm gonna call you a boy. Oh, that boy wants me. I had to be careful in the words I use because people would take those words, oh, this gay man, this 43-year-old gay man likes boys. You know what I mean? And so this is where, as a person who has been a victim of sex abuse, to have my own words weaponized against me, I have to now I'm re-victimized and having to watch how I move and be guilted into saying certain things because to say something else could be looked at as wrong. And so I would just say to any young man out there who's been abused by a man or a woman, I tell you, first of all, we're going to have a conversation here, me, Blue, and Damage, a much more well thought out, more layered conversation, because I want to explore straight men who've been telling me how their sexual relationships with their women have been impacted because of sex abuse from women or men or both.
That's real.
And started the Clubhouse chat. There were so many of you that just came into the room and shared very candidly, very intimate details of experiences you've had in front of a room of strangers. And my hat is off to all of you that have the courage to share, because you are the RazB and RazB is the you and me. And we all deserve to have an equal playing field when it comes to having our trauma validated through a process that can hold our attackers accountable.
Jason, I just want to say one thing that you said that was really powerful about people coming forward. I love Psychology Today. It's actually one of my favorite magazines, so I love that you got those stats from there. A lot of men have been sexually assaulted and don't know it. A lot of people will tell you stories. Oh, I was 13 and my mother's friend, I lost my virginity to her. And I think it's a funny story. They don't realize that they were sexually assaulted. So there are going to be some people who are going to be watching this who have been sexually assaulted as men, but because they're taught to normalize it, they don't even know it themselves. So I hope that we can also speak to them who are going to have that aha moment listening to us talk.
Well, when I wrote my book and I recounted the 2 situations that happened for me with men, right? Because in my mind, I was sexually abused by 2 men. On this show, again, if you've been watching from day one, you remember when we had T.S. Madison here the first time, and I was telling a story about how I was laying in the bed at 8 years old with 2 older women who I had sex with at 8 years old. And I joked about it. I said we were laying in bed smoking Marlboros. I joked about it. And people in the comments let me have it. They were like, how dare you joke about being molested? I didn't even see that as being molested, because at 8 years old, if you read the book, God must have forgotten about me. I was running down the streets with a key around my neck. I was a grown-ass 8-year-old boy, but I was still a kid. And so what people witnessed and what I witnessed in the playback was I was acknowledging that I had been molested another time by women. And I don't think that we think about it that way. If you're the young girl who wore the baby fat jacket in high school because you was the dope boy on the block, he was 23, you were 16, you were molested. If you were the young boy, 16, the 23-year-old, and you was that cool who had an old chick, no, you were molested. And I think once we can come to terms with those conversations, only then can we really start to process the pain. And I tell you, it's coming, Chris. You might as well just go on and own up and deal with it.
Mm.
Now, for the record, I'll say this so I don't get sued. Chris Stokes and Marques Houston have both denied the claims of doing any wrongdoing in sexual abuse to RazB or any other members of B2K. And my understanding, talking to Raz years ago, that there were other members of the group who have been molested. And when I look back over me on Love and Hip Hop, I wonder, why wasn't I in scenes with Omarion? Why wasn't I in scenes with Boog? Why wasn't I in real scenes with Fizz? You know, there were the little moments here at the reunion, and then there was, you know, a pop-up here and there on specific topics. But why didn't you allow me? Because, you know, I was going to ask. There's many times I told producers that I wanted to confront Fizz on the conversation that I had with Raz back in 2007, where he said that Fizz was also allegedly molested. And I wasn't allowed to do that with the producers because they didn't want to touch that topic. But that's the topic that we're going to touch now, because I believe these kids were victimized. And one more thing, Chris. Quentin Tarver has also alleged that you sexually abused him. And I have a friend that was involved with your group and in your camp back in the day who's not famous, that the world does not know. And he was there and he witnessed a lot of things. So be careful when you send those cease and desist letters, because I'm going to tell you, a subpoena is a dangerous thing. You better ask Kaya. Just like I snatched all her shit, you'll be surprised at what I know. And you'll be surprised at the skeletons in your closet that I got over here in a drawer waiting for them to come out.